My mother-in-law yelled at me, saying I not only make our son do chores and take care of him, but now I'm trying to get our money too. She called me lazy and said I only bring in $700. I felt scared as she pointed a knife at me. It hurt my feelings a lot. I was doing all the work and looking after the kids because my husband didn't have a job. I couldn't take it anymore. I left everything and took my child to my parents' house. My name is Emily. I'm 23 years old, and I live with my husband, our child, and my mother-in-law. My husband, Richard, was popular in high school. He was good at soccer and was the student president. Everyone admired him. He came back to our town after getting a job and asked me out. We started dating seriously after a few dates. Even as an adult, he was still the handsome, impressive guy I fell for. After I finished vocational school, I found out I was pregnant. It was a bit unexpected, but I thought I could have a happy life with my child and Richard. But things got tough when we talked about life after getting married. "Why don't we move into my parents' house after we get married?" Richard suggested. "But I want it to be just us three with our child," I replied. "But won't it be expensive to live on our own?" he asked. "If we stay with my parents, we won't have to worry much about money. And if we both work, we can afford our own place, right?" I reasoned. "Well, about that, my income this month isn't great," Richard admitted. "How bad is it?" I asked. "It's less than $1,000, he confessed. "What? Why is it so low? You told me you were working at an IT company," I exclaimed. "I quit that job. Now I'm making money at the casino and doing part-time work," he explained. "At a casino? Why would you do that?" I questioned. After just 1 month, he quit his job. "If you're okay with paying for everything, we can live in an apartment," he said casually. His lack of enthusiasm made me worried. Was I the only one excited about our new life? "See my concern?" He gripped my hands tightly. "It's just temporary until I find a new job. I'll make you happy, Emily. I'll take care of all the chores and our child until then." Believing his promise, we got married and moved into his parents' house. After giving birth safely, I was determined to work hard for our son. Both Richard and my mother-in-law seemed happy, and I looked forward to our future together. But even after our son was born, Richard didn't help with chores or taking care of our child. Instead, he spent his days at the casino. After going to the casino again, "What about helping with the chores and taking care of our child?" I asked, reminding him of his promise. "Don't tell me what to do," Richard suddenly shouted back at me. Confused by his outburst, my mother-in-law came into the room, having heard the argument. "What's going on here?" she asked. "I'm busy with work, and she's asking me to help with chores and taking care of the child," Richard explained. "What? That's the wife's job," my mother-in-law exclaimed. Richard hadn't told his mother about quitting his job. Instead, he painted me as the bad wife who forced him to do all the housework and take care of our child. His lies turned my mother-in-law against me, making her resentful. Richard kept going to his part-time job and the casino, where he often lost the little money he earned. I ended up paying most of our expenses, making our life tough since I wasn't working. Eventually, I had to go back to work, leaving our son at a child care center. Luckily, I found a job as a dental hygienist pretty quickly. But when I came home from work every day, my mother-in-law would yell at me. "What do you think you're doing? This isn't playtime. You're a parent, but all you do is fool around. Make dinner now." She slammed the newspaper she was reading onto the floor in frustration. Sometimes she'd even break plates when she was really angry. My mother-in-law was unpredictable. Her mood could change in an instant. I was afraid of what she might do next, so I just went along with it. But between taking care of my son, working, and doing housework every day, I was exhausted. I couldn't take it anymore. So I decided to talk to Richard one more time. I caught him before he left for the casino early in the morning. "Listen, I've reached my limit. Can't you help out with our son a little?" "What? Like I said, I'm busy. I'm trying to find a new job." "You get that right. Do you want me to stay jobless forever? You'd be in trouble then, wouldn't you? Your child's father, unemployed. If you don't like it, just do what you're told," Richard retorted. "But we're barely making ends meet. I'm using up all my savings to cover our food expenses. Do you even know how expensive diapers are? You say you're making money at the casino, but we never see any of it," I argued. Most of our living expenses were covered by my money. My mother-in-law used to pay for utilities, but now she wanted $500 a month from us. So I had to dip into my savings. Even the food costs were eating away at my savings, and I was running out of money fast. All I had left was what I earned from a part-time job I had while I was in school. That's enough. How dare you talk back to me? You've got a lot of nerve saying those things after moving into my house. Richard, who was usually kind, changed completely when it came to money or the casino. Hearing Richard shouting, my mother-in-law came into the room. "What's going on now? Is your wife complaining again?" she asked. "Yeah, she is. She's telling me to do housework and take care of our child. And she wants me to help with the living expenses. Can you believe her audacity, Mother? Anyway, I'm off to work now," Richard said as he left. Once he was gone, my mother-in-law's expression turned sharp. "You've got some nerve, expecting us to take care of your child and do the housework while demanding money from us. You should be ashamed." "It's not like that. I'm not making demands. Life is just really tough without a little help," I tried to explain. "You must be wasting money, aren't you? Careless with finances," my mother-in-law accused. She didn't understand the situation at all. She didn't know that her own son was unemployed and spending all his time at the casino. I was told to keep quiet, but I couldn't hold back anymore. "Do you know that Richard isn't earning anything? He's unemployed because he quit his job." "What are you saying? Richard has always been successful. Sure, he didn't pass his college entrance exams, but he got a job at a reputable company," my mother-in-law insisted. "He quit that job after just a month. Now he's always at the casino. I can't manage on my savings alone. It's not fair," I pleaded. "Don't talk nonsense." My mother-in-law refused to believe me. Her son, who had always been successful in sports and studies, was her pride and joy. She couldn't accept that he was now unemployed and wasting his time at the casino. Her face turned red with anger, and she stormed out of the room. When she returned, to my horror, she was holding a knife. "What are you going to do? Please stop." I stepped back, holding my son close. My mother-in-law advanced towards me, knife raised. "I'm tired of your insults towards my son. Having a wife like you is ruining Richard. You're a lazy parasite living off a measly $700. Get out of this house." Her harsh words made me break into a cold sweat. I feared for my son's safety. Seeing my fear, my mother-in-law seemed satisfied and lowered the knife. "Good, you understand. We don't want parasites like you here. Just stay quiet and do your chores," she said before leaving the room. Feeling the tension lift, I collapsed to the ground. My son started to cry, sensing something was wrong. I held him close, stroking his back, and made a decision. We couldn't stay in this house any longer. It was unbelievable that someone could threaten with a knife so casually. She didn't even seem human. Until now, I had been swayed by Richard's sweet words. After every argument, I used to think I needed to support him, that he would fall apart without me. But I had reached my limit. Above all, I had to protect my crying son in my arms. I couldn't raise him in this house. I decided to leave the next day. In the morning, my stern-faced mother-in-law spoke to me. "Emily, get ready for my husband's memorial service next week. All our relatives will be there, so everything must be perfect." Without waiting for my reply, she left for a neighbor's house. Next week was my father-in-law's memorial service. Richard and my mother-in-law had been planning a big feast and reminiscing about him. I was supposed to handle all the preparations, but I wasn't listening anymore. As soon as they left, I quickly packed our things and fled my in-laws' house. I didn't have much, just clothes, my son's toys, and diapers. When I got back to my parents' house, they were surprised. But when I told them everything, my mother cried and hugged me tightly. My usually calm father was very angry and told me to rest at home. Then that evening, the phone rang. It must have been Richard, wondering why I hadn't returned to make dinner. Ignoring the call and blocking his number was a good move to protect yourself and your son. The next day, mother-in-law and Richard showed up at your parents' house together, banging on the door early in the morning. Your parents tried to send them away, but you decided to let them in. As soon as you opened the door, they started shouting. "How could you leave without a word? What kind of wife does that? It's strange to just disappear like that." "Please, let's not shout. You're disturbing the neighbors," you said calmly, holding back the urge to point out who the real problem was. When they tried to grab you, your father stepped in. "We'll call the police if you resort to violence." Let's talk inside first, with my parents present, he said firmly. Once inside, you initiated the conversation with mother-in-law and Richard. Why did you leave without saying anything? I was overwhelmed with childcare and my job, and yet you never helped, despite my pleas. Well, I was busy too. Busy at the casino, like I've already said. Our son doesn't go to the casino. Stop spreading lies. Richard insisted, while his mother seemed to still believe he was working. It seemed she thought highly of him and couldn't imagine otherwise. Mother-in-law, where do you think Richard is employed? You asked. At a securities company. I saw the job offer letter. After all, she replied confidently. Well, why don't we call them and find out if Richard is still there? That would settle it, you suggested. Oh, wait a minute. Richard stammered nervously. What's the problem? If you're working there, it shouldn't be an issue. That's, ignoring Richard's discomfort, you dialed the securities company on your phone and switched to speaker mode so everyone could hear. You asked if Richard was working there. That individual resigned several years ago, if memory serves me right. He was with us for just about a month, came the response from the other end of the line. The words from the phone left mother-in-law speechless. Richard was looking down, his fists clenched. Did you really quit? Why? She asked. Because it was frustrating. Everything was just grunt work, and the boss would yell at me for the smallest mistakes. It felt like harassment, Richard explained. Richard, why didn't you tell us what you've been doing since? You asked. I'm job hunting, he replied vaguely. How many years have you been job hunting? You don't seem to be getting any offers. Tell me, how many companies have you applied to so I can verify? You pressed. Well, there aren't any good job offers. When a good company comes along, I'll get a job, Richard said confidently. You seem very confident in yourself. By the way, you're working part-time now, right? How much did you make last month? You questioned. 700, Richard admitted reluctantly. 700? Didn't you tell me that Emily could only earn 700 and couldn't support herself? So you were the one supporting her? You questioned, realizing that Richard had misled his mother about your income. In reality, as a dental hygienist, you earned at least $2,000. Mother-in-law, now knowing the truth, blushed furiously as she glared at Richard. In response, Richard became extremely angry. Why do you have to do this? This is all your fault, making me look like a fool, he exclaimed, clearly hurt and embarrassed. He hit the table hard. You shouldn't reveal things like this in public. It's defamation. If you want to sue, go ahead, but I'll sue you for threatening me with a knife too. Besides, lawsuits aren't free. Do you have the money? You countered, standing up for yourself and refusing to be intimidated. At that, Richard clicked his tongue, likely realizing he had spent all his earnings from the casino. As mother-in-law was in shock after learning the truth about Richard's unemployment, I decided to lay it all out for her. I've been the one earning all our living expenses. When we got married, Richard promised to take care of the housework and childcare instead of me working. But after we got married, he didn't do any of it. That's different from what you heard, I explained. It seemed mother-in-law had simply believed whatever Richard told her, right? She had gotten upset when I asked for help with the chores and childcare. She even pointed a knife at me and told me to keep quiet and do my housework. I could see her face turning pale as she stood in front of my parents, being called out for her behavior. Mother-in-law, you haven't contributed anything to the household either. We've been living off my income this whole time. I have no intention of continuing to work for you, so I want a divorce, I stated firmly. Divorce? Wait a minute. Don't just drop that bombshell all of a sudden, Richard protested. Yes, that's right. I'll help out too, so please come back, my father added, offering support. No thank you, I stated firmly. Their surprised expressions indicated they were taken aback. I, who had always given in after being yelled at or begged persistently, had clearly refused this time. I don't want to live with someone who threatens me with a knife just to get their way. I'm tired of living with Richard, who spends all day gambling at the casino. I'll make sure you pay me compensation for all the hard work I've put in so far, as well as child support, I declared. No way. That's going to be a problem. I can't possibly afford that, Richard protested. Well then, stop gambling and start paying, I retorted. But I can't do that. I don't have a job, Richard admitted. I was appalled by Richard's lack of understanding. You don't have a job because you're too picky about what work you do. Do you have any desire to do whatever it takes? There aren't many companies out there that would hire someone without qualifications or experience. Don't take society for granted. Many people work hard in difficult situations to earn a living. Yet people like you, who quit their jobs on a whim because they got angry or didn't enjoy it, no one will want to hire them. He keeps saying he'll find a job someday, but at this rate, it's unlikely. I'll contact you through my lawyer about the divorce proceedings. Please do not contact me from now on, I stated firmly. What? How selfish. What's going to happen to us? Richard protested. At my words, mother-in-law flared up in anger. I put on a deliberately puzzled expression and responded to her hostile words. I don't know. Maybe you should figure out how to earn a living on your own, you heartless woman. Heartless? I don't want to be called that by you. Remember when you called me a parasite living off a measly $700 per month? Remember when you said that to me, your daughter-in-law, while holding a knife to my throat? By the way, the lazy person making $700 a month is right next to you. Are you not telling him to leave? I confronted her. As I spoke, mother-in-law started shaking with rage. Maybe I went too far. She leaned over and grabbed my collar. Stop it. I told you I will call the police if you lay a hand on her. My father forcefully pulled her off of me, but she was too riled up. So not only threats with a knife, but physical violence too. How barbaric. Don't you think it's better not to compound your crimes any further? I said, ignoring her resentful glare, and turned to Richard. I used to believe you would change, but I'm giving up on that now. I need to protect our son. I won't trouble you anymore. I'll take care of the money, the housework, and the childcare, so please come back. You'll take care of the money? Really? Even with careful budgeting, it's over $1,000 a month. Can you earn that? Richard's face turned pale upon hearing my words. He had never made more than $1,000 since he quit his job. But I have Mom's pension, he stammered. So, you're telling me you're dependent on my pension now? Mother-in-law couldn't keep her calm at Richard's absurd words. There's nothing else I can do. I don't have a job. Now I'm doing part-time work. Can we try to work things out? Richard pleaded. My father, hearing Richard's unyielding stance, finally spoke up. Richard, you and your mother have taken great advantage of our precious daughter. If I had known you were such a person, I would have opposed the marriage by all means. I will never let her step foot in your house again. I'll sever all ties. But I can't live without Emily. Please, give me another chance. Richard pleaded desperately. Don't joke with me. Can't live without our daughter? You're already planning to depend on her. A man who has no intention or grit to earn his own living and make his wife's life comfortable doesn't deserve our daughter. Leave now, my father retorted firmly. For the first time, I saw my father shout. It sent chills down my spine and seemed to shake Richard and mother-in-law as well. Richard was kneeling, his head bowed. It was a stark contrast to the charming image I had of him during our college days. Please reconsider. I beg you, Emily, Richard pleaded once more. But my parents wouldn't budge. They were fed up. I don't want to be treated like a slave by you two anymore. Please don't involve me in anything from now on, I explained to Richard and mother-in-law. As soon as we kicked them out of the house, we locked the door. For a while, they banged on the door and shouted. But as soon as a passing police officer addressed them, they ran off. Later, I heard that Richard was cut off by his mother and kicked out of the house. Now he's living in a rundown apartment, surviving on part-time work and struggling financially. Apparently, due to his short temper, he doesn't stick to one job for long and keeps switching between part-time jobs at convenience stores, construction sites, and so on. He's barely making ends meet. In order to pay me compensation and child support, he's juggling multiple part-time jobs and is unable to look for a full-time job. There were rumors that he's still going to the casino and may even be in debt. But I'm not interested. News of Richard's downfall spread quickly among our high school classmates, and I received numerous sightings and information about him. It seems that the neighbors have witnessed mother-in-law kicking Richard out and their frequent arguments. His unemployment and the fact that he was left by his wife became public knowledge. She must be feeling extremely embarrassed after boasting about her son all the time. She hardly ever leaves the house now. With the help of my parents in doing the housework and raising my son, I continue working. I now have more free time to spend with my son. I don't need to leave him at the child care center since my parents take care of him. So everything has been great. I wish I had divorced sooner. From now on, I'm going to cherish the time I spend with my son and watch him grow up closely.